Well, you
not
gotta
okay.
create a
Yeah.
character. That's the whole thing. But I don't want
No,
to
it'll bring the
stand
other
in
side of that coffee shop.
Yes,
They are.
she showed
Yeah.
me.
It, people would stand in a sweaty costume for like 12 hours. That's
What are you
not
doing?
about that life. I did enjoy being Chuck E.
Yes,
Cheese,
yes
though.
indeed.
I'm sorry, being Chuck E.
Yeah, when I worked at Chuck E.
Oh,
Cheese.
Yeah.
you were
I
Chuck
would
E.
get inside the costume.
You were Chuck E.
Yeah, I was Chuck E.
Yes,
The E
everybody.
stands for entertainment.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love your manicure.
No, be like,
Oh, thank you.
Chuck
I
E.
try to get it for the hands.
Yeah, that blows my mind.
Yeah, I would never have done
Charles
it.
Entertainment Cheese.
I know.
Yeah, that's his
I know.
full name.
That's way less creative than
I
I
would
thought.
get
Wow.
a costume.
This is live, and this is what it looks
So
like.
corporate.
I'm really glad I know that about you. I'm glad I know that you want the
Are
exact
we on,
So-
I worked at
Six.
Chuck E.
Yeah,
Cheese. I was
you
mostly
know.
one of those
And it's
people who
recorded
does
too,
the
right?
Not for me.
at the
I've got
entrance
more
and
work to
puts
do.
it in your hand.
Eventually,
Oh,
I
okay,
hope.
yeah. I mean, I haven't been to Chuck E.
I'm
Cheese.
so glad we're finally here with these
That
That
thesis
job was
Yeah.
really shit. They
discussions.
let
It's
me
just
take
nice to
off
know what
2
actually
hours and they
happens.
thought it was, no, 2
You
hours,
know?
and they thought I was quitting, but I had
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And they said, sure. And then we came back and like, you want
Hello. Yeah, take your time.
I've taken too much time.
It's okay, we're still missing Bruce.
I'm waiting for Bruce.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right,
It's
okay.
It's not
Oh,
true.
right. Sorry, we agreed that you're in the middle.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
We have
Where do you
a-
want me? There. That's
Out of
me
those
right
two.
here. Okay. Right here.
This is like a new thing.
What?
This is different.
Well,
Usually we have like a person at a desk with no.
Thesis. It's just 3 hours of this. So. It took us years.
3 years in the making.
Yeah.
Yep, and there it is, and it never stops.
Yeah. Most people would have, since it's a loop, they would have duplicated and copy pasted frames,
Yes.
but we painted each one by hand. 3,000
The
minutes.
craft, the
Are you
craft.
just
Crap.
talking about the forms? You just sent me a DM. It's what thesis thing? You should
Well,
have
yeah,
sent.
like to sign up
It's
for.
the yeah. It's
It doesn't list the instructor.
really.
Yeah. So what number are you?
What number are
Oh,
you?
oh, sorry to register for the
Yeah,
thing.
I'm registering for
Totally,
classes.
yeah. No,
Crazy
I think
stuff.
he would just register for thesis hours, right? It's just thesis hours, and it's whoever's working with him.
Right.
It's just
Yeah,
if it
okay.
says thesis, just do.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like
There's
whenever.
so many of them though.
And it doesn't because it's we don't like meet at a set time of it. You know.
Okay. Yeah.
Wait, let me see what. Can you pull it up?
Yeah, right here.
It is playing music,
It's just
so
not
if you
like-
talk to your people and they can hear the music,
It's just
they-
not
they
like
can-
happening.
Okay.
If they can see this car and hear
It's
the
like
music,
where-
they're
Keep
all
it in the headphones.
Okay, because it
and
just
see if
says
you can
I
hear
know
that.
this English.
Oh, I know
Yeah.
it's working. I know the
Yeah.
stream's working.
Oh, what's your
It's
thing?
got it.
I didn't know
it's
who you
gotta
had
just be
watching.
whoever-
Okay.
Right, but if they are watching and they can both see the animation and hear the music,
Okay.
then
Yeah.
they've got
Because
the
I
full screen.
that may be the way to go.
So do you show the check?
Sorry, I'm like doing
If-
tech
so
support.
when
in
they, you know when they pull up like thesis hours and there's like 8 of them and it's like
Yeah, look at your, it'll be, probably both on D2L. I usually check it through Banner though. And there should be, you will have
Oh, I'll
a
have that.
section
Thank
of
you,
your own
okay.
thesis.
okay, cool.
And so whatever that number is, but why they don't associate them with names.
Right, and then like when
It's
the
too easy,
students
but
on
it's too
Banner
simple.
to put the
Well, it's, but I mean,
You
well,
can just like
I would-
do it. and
this
it'd be
place,
done.
Right?
well,
You could
why
understand
would
it.
you?
Yeah,
You wouldn't have to
yeah,
email
yeah.
multiple
Are you able
people.
to see that?
Blast them, no one knows.
Well, if
Are you able to?
All of this should be on an
Okay,
app
well,
anyway.
my site
Okay.
cannot
I
handle
know, right?
watching
You
the
should
stream.
be able to
haven't
do
started
this
yet.
from your
at the same
phone.
time. It's very
that's what I
Yeah,
did
we'll
with
check for you, right?
Banner.
And it should tell you what you
It's my dad.
have yet to take, what you've taken.
I told you to get on the
Yeah.
Matt would want us to hold for 7 minutes, and
You
I
can
was applying to jobs, drink greater shorts.
We said we put her in intentionally. Yes.
So true, bestie. Did you get back from any of them?
I'm feeling
About
better.
what?
It's
Your
gotta
jobs?
Oh, no.
keep-
Oh, yeah, we're doing my best.
Okay.
Okay.
So it'll be like either on D2L in the fall,
Why would
24,
you
or on
last
Banner.
one thing?
You can hear the music and
Yeah, that's like my whole strategy.
and I went over there and I heard myself saying what I just said. It was really weird. That part didn't matter.
Okay.
But yeah,
Do you
you
feel like a time traveler?
I do. I imagine what it feels like.
I'm gonna sign up for thesis hours.
No usable data found.
And then it generally exists. 'Cause I love
No
all the
usable
No
data.
usable, that's, yeah,
That's the
the
best.
title of my
Oh,
old
yeah.
publication.
No usable
No
data.
usable data
I
found.
should have looked.
Okay.
It's actually
Okay.
a really good title.
I actually have to get into D2L, but that's tomorrow's problem.
Yes.
No, I'm not seeing it. I can't figure out how it known was whether asking. So there should be proof of that somewhere.
Do I just sign
That
for
seems
one?
really nice.
No, Graham, don't do that.
Okay.
Figure it out right now.
So
You're
sorry.
No, you're fine.
I went into like every section.
That's fair. So you'll be sitting right there.
Yeah, we have assigned seating.
Yeah.
I didn't know, I
I
had
won't
no
say it
idea.
was my choice, but it's
It's actually, it's audio now.
yeah. You're the loudest.
I-
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I was shocked they
In
didn't
fact,
do
if
that.
it were, I should shove back some. But I'll try to dampen.
I'm not finding it. I don't do that.
I apologize.
Graham, this is gonna be an adventure that I'll have with Salute later to figure out what.
Registration's open like yesterday, so you have time.
You have plenty of time.
It's thesis hours. No, it's not gonna
Oh,
fill out.
you
You're
can-
not gonna, Raph's not gonna run.
Objectively will not fill.
You could throw,
Like,
you
there's
could
no
put it
way.
off
This is
until.
okay. You're not.
You could do this in September.
We can do it.
I have one
Right.
until September.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Okay, I was like, alright. This is messy. Okay, I have it in.
So are we online? Are we streaming?
We are already
We are,
streaming.
Oh, okay, nice.
Be careful what you say.
Okay.
I have this piping straight into David Anthony's office. If you have any criticisms about the department?
Alright, no, I don't.
Everything's
Okay.
normal.
Alright, you let me know when you want to begin.
Alright.
How you feeling?
I would like to have a good time. I just want to have fun. So
We're all here to have fun.
we're all exactly.
This is about.
So I am ready. I am
Awesome. Okay. So I'm looking into a camera anywhere, Toby, or am I just saying?
You can just talk. You can just talk
Okay.
to
We
me.
thought, we thought that this would be best if you guys had it like a
Oh, it's
conversation.
coming. Okay, cool. Okay.
The
Beautiful.
camera is here if you
Okay.
need to like break the fourth wall and say something.
Okay.
That's the fourth wall, but otherwise.
Is it an AI camera, so it just automatically jumps?
Nope, we got the dumbest camera possible.
Okay.
It took some searching, but we did it.
Alright.
All right. Well, we are here today to celebrate the creative achievements of Dajonea Robinson, third-year MFA, who is presenting her thesis, Wallflower. I just want to introduce Dej a little bit and talk not just about how exciting it is for me to be chairing this thesis, which we were just discussing in a workshop about how we've been reading this. Like, you came to the MFA with this project, and it's evolved so beautifully. But yeah, it's not just a joy for me to be chairing this thesis, but also just to be seeing you graduating from the MFA, triumphant, having done so much cool stuff, and headed off into PhD program. Yeah, okay. Well, I'll let you talk about that. I don't want to spoil it for the viewers at home. But
Surprise.
so Wallflower. I'll just speak about this project a little bit. This is what you applied to the MFA with, right? And when you came in, with this project, it was already, there were so many cool themes, going on for this piece, and it was like, we talked, you spoke in your letter, and we spoke together about Jordan Peele as a huge influence, right? And not just Jordan Peele, but like everything he's doing with Monkey Paw, right? And everything he did with Keegan-Michael Key, right? In the comedy world, and so I think that like Peele as someone who is using, in particular, horror to thematize these like really profound issues of like being black in America, and like finding oneself just in the midst of all this kind of historical and genealogical chaos and trauma, while also finding one's way home, as it were, right? And that's what we see in so much of his work, and that's what we see in Wallflower. And so when we first met Robin, right? When I first met Robin, she was a young woman on a journey, and she was facing like the protagonist. Well, like the protagonist in Get Out, right? Like she was facing a whole lot of trauma, and a whole lot of sort of like intense gory metaphor, for what she's lived through and what her ancestors have lived, what her ancestors have lived through. And that was all there in that first draft. But you took 3 years, and my goodness, like a sponge, you absorbed everything they taught you, right?
Yeah.
You also taught yourself so much. And you made this novel into something a whole lot bigger than you started out with. So as I said in workshop on Monday, this is grown. It's grown. It's beautiful, right? You still have that visceral cinematic quality to the writing, right? But now you have like settled into your themes elegantly. And I think you have a piece here that can really take you far. So we're going to talk about that today. And the order of operations is we're going to have Dej present some audio clips, right, from the novel. And then she's going to speak a little bit about the piece to all of us, right? And I personally would love to hear about the themes you're dealing with in the piece, right? But also your personal experience writing this, right? And having this it's kind of a unique experience because you did take this exact project from like year 1, right, to year 3, and there's so many different ways to do an MFA. They're all valid, and this is one of the many great ways, and it's kind of a rare way though. So it's very cool to sort of see you grow with the project. So yeah, if you could speak to the themes after we hear the clips, the themes, the process, kind of what you want us to know today, and then your personal experience, right?
Okay.
After that, we'll go ahead and ask you questions, okay? And you'll just kind of get the chance to speak a bit more on the work you've done. And then we'll segue on into maybe a more broader Q&A. So if the audience has any questions or encouragement, just like, it really is going to be softball. We all love you. And then we'll see if we confer you with another.
Yeah, we're
We
gonna
might
have to.
not.
We're gonna have to.
We might walk out.
You know me. You're gonna have to convince me. So yeah.
Tough as nails.
Fantastic. So let's pull up warning signs first, Toby. So it's just a brief background on what warning signs is. I used 11 Labs, which is like an AI voice synthesizer. So it's all read by an AI. And then I used Midjourney to create the art piece you'll see. Then I used Pika Labs to create movement within that art piece. So this is just an excerpt from a kayaking scene. It's not the full chapter, but just a brief little moment of it.
It wasn't until I saw her delicate face and limbs entangled in the monstrous blades of bull kelp that stopped me in my tracks. Tears swelled up in my eyes. It wasn't the first dead body I've seen, but I recognized her. It was my cashier, Cheyenne, from the restaurant I stopped at over in Mercer County. How did she get here? What happened to her? I thought. Her skin absorbed water and bloated her body. The skin at the edges of her face peeled. Her complexion was no longer a honey brown hue, but was now a greenish-black pigment. She was missing some fingers, probably stolen by fish or crabs or both. Her neck was clearly broken and distorted. There were bits of polypropylene rope material that was loosely attached to her neck. Loose folds flesh-floated, barely attached to her arms and legs. With shaky hands, I blew my whistle as hard as I could, emptying out the air from my lungs and belly. Someone had to hear my calls. Someone had to rescue her from her oceanic coffin. The water flashed her eyes open. I stared into dark, empty pits where eyes once were. I couldn't look away. Her sockets looked like endless tunnels without light. A wave rocked my kayak, and the cool metal from the whistle between my lips brought me to the present. I blew my whistle again. I couldn't see any orange kayaks coming my way through the rolling fog. The sun disappeared behind the dense, dark clouds. I was alone. Another swell splashed against my kayak, knocking my shades into the water. Cheyenne's lifeless body was no longer entangled to my right. Her body was visibly gone. It disappeared. Was she drugged underneath by something? I thought. A red-tinged mist fell around me, I began to paddle again through the bull kelp. My eyelashes were moist with red liquid. My heart pace quickened. I was almost out of the mass of seaweed when Cheyenne's seemingly dead body surfaced directly to the left of my kayak. I let out a loud shriek. I hadn't expected her to reappear, especially not that close to me. Her eyes were still open. A wave opened her mouth. She didn't have a tongue, and critters were moving inside of her throat. God, no! I thrashed backwards and flipped into salty water. I was fully submerged in bitter water, and my lower body was stuck in my kayak. I swallowed a salty gulp of water and tried to spit it out only to swallow more. I panicked and dropped my paddle. I scooted my thighs, rolled my hips, and did those motions a couple of times.
Okay, so this is like a prototype of how I would want an audiobook of Wallflower. I just used the AI to do it because I personally, I'd rather have someone else read for me than me read for myself. And the next one is Parents' Tragedy. I used real actors. One of them is a graduate from here. I won't say their name because they're pretty private with their professional life now. So it's an audio drama. So it's dramatized. So I have some sound effects. This is also a prototype that I presented my first year here, spring in your class, I believe. So I kind of went back in to level out some of the audio. It's not perfect, but this is a prototype of what it could be if I choose to have like a dramatization of Wallflower, which I most likely will, just for fun.
It's a good idea, yeah.
And it's cheaper.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Oh, sorry. This is a horror story, essentially, so if it's too graphic, feel free to pause or walk out if you need to.
I'll just walk. Actually, that would be if you can freak me enough that I have to leave, you absolutely win. I've been begging my graduate students. You finally did.
I figured it out.
Yeah.
I read from my notes that you've been having flashbacks in your dreams. So tell me about this recurring dream you're having. I thought you passed this. Don't be afraid. It can't hurt you anymore. Sweaty palms, wet cheeks, and heavy breathing. Sweaty palms, and wet cheeks, and heavy breathing. Sweaty palms, and wet cheeks, and heavy breathing. My mother told me to stay in this damn closet. She told me to stay quiet. You didn't. Shame on you. I deserve better lives than that.
Damn it, Lynn. I'm tired of your bull. I'm not lying, don't you see? This is our destiny. Now come here.
Get the hell away from me, Francis. Please.
Shut up. Shut the hell up. Our father doesn't like a begging bitch. You know that, Lynn. Don't you see, Lynn? This is our destiny. To fly with the birds and dive into the blood-red sea. To be loyal. Servants will never be free.
Shut up.
Darkness shall consume us. Righteous pleads of mercy are overdue.
hell. You foul son of a bitch.
Please take this offering of blood. You will never be servants to the false god. Show us the way to nurture our dark side within. Therefore, we can live in a world where it's just sin. Oh, baby, don't cry. Shh. I love you, my sweet friend. Don't you see? I'm doing what's best for our family. I know you're there, Robin. Come on out now. It's okay, my child. Come out of the damn closet. Oh, my sweet child. Don't you see? This is our destiny. One day, when the land is cursed, all shall see. One day, when the land is cursed, all shall fall to the land of hell, my dear child. Don't be afraid. You'll join us soon enough. Until then, be the innocent flower I know you are. But be the serpent under.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today's session. I think we're off to a good start.
So that's the end of it. Thank you.
I also hadn't realized how much I miss Greg Cass.
Yeah. He's a good guy, good guy. So once again, that's just a prototype of what it could be if I were to hire like real voice actors outside of myself and other peers, and like an audio mixer too to help me out with that. That was my opening scene, but it might be moved, you know, potentially. I have since rewrote it, added some new details into it. But that's what I have prepared for you all today.
Awesome.
Great.
Well, Deja, if you'll tell us a little bit about now kind of the project globally, your sort of personal experience with it, and maybe just kind of like how the themes fit in with your like life and work as an artist on a larger scale.
Okay, I'll try my best to get into that. So I'll read my log line I have for it. So, daring trauma survivor Robin uncovers her dark truth. Demons and she-devils look just like her. Armed with her newfound strength and courage, she takes it upon herself to face the darkness and prove that true power comes from within. Wallflower. So that is my logline that I have. My themes are, well, I think there's a lot of themes with this story, but the major themes that come to mind is first the Black experience. And truthfully, it kind of bonked me on my head recently that it is a Black experience. Like, these are experiences that not everyone has, and I didn't fully conceptualize that. Like, yeah, I wrote it, and I know that I experienced it, but not like the weight behind it. So when I say the Black experience, we see it through Robin's eyes. This is her story mostly, but her peers are also all Black, and they all have their own lives. They all experience different things. So through Robin's experience, she gets a job, right? She thinks she has a job, but then she finds out that no, she doesn't, and there's no real reason why she didn't get the job besides microaggressions or subtle racism. And that happens every day. I mean, it could have happened to me, potentially. I've been told that I am exceptional, and the interview went stellar. But for whatever reason, I didn't get hired. Don't know why. Small town. Can't tell you why. But even though she goes through these horrors within her life, we will also eventually see the love. Now, that will come in my next rewrite because it's mostly just horror right now. That's how it reads. But it's also like a marginalized experience that I'm showing, like Cheyenne, during her time at the taco shop. Now, it is more explicit racism, so I might tone it down a little bit to make it more subtle, because most times it is more subtle. It leaves you questioning, did that really just happen? And those are just some experiences that my characters go through that, even though you may not be black or of color, you can understand it and see it for what it is. So that's one of my major themes so far. And then the next one is grief and trauma. Oh, it's a lot. Oh, most of the story deals with grief and trauma. And it is heavy. But then I realized people carry that weight. I carry that weight. Part of the trauma stemmed from my life. Like, for example, the murder-suicide. Well, I have my mom here. But I experienced a partner, he was murdered. And then I had a partner who committed suicide. So even though she deals with these things, it is a lot, people really carry those baggages. So I try to point at that. I try to show that it is messy, and everyone's process will be different. Even all my characters actually deal with grief and trauma. For example, Voight, Robin's partner, he was a slave trader in his previous life, so he has to deal with the generational trauma of his actions. Reese, she was a slave, and she killed her children, like in Beloved, by Toni Morrison. I tried to find a reason why could someone kill their child. I see it on the news all the time, but there's no real good reason. But I did enjoy the reason of slavery, having to end your child's life because you don't want them to go through what you're going through. She doesn't carry that weight, and she doesn't carry it very well. She harms other people because of it, because she's so hurt. Genesis, you'll see in later drafts, she has trauma too, from her time during foster care and her own trauma through her family. And she wears her trauma on her sleeve, but she hides it in a facade that she's tough. But truthfully, she's just hurt too. So grief and trauma is another major theme. It deals with like triumph too. At the end of the day, Robin does enact on revenge. She does. She kills her attacker. We'll later find that out. But she forgives herself. And she forces other people to forgive themselves too. Like, she shows Reese who she is as a person, and shows her past transgressions, and forces her to face that, to forgive herself. It really deals with resilience and the power of self-love. Because even though Robin's life is messy, her choices are messy, the things around her is harmful, she still finds it within herself to love herself and to love her scars and to become a better person because of it. Those are my major themes. And I guess I can get into inspiration, right?
Sure, yeah.
So I had a lot of inspiration. So I had to take it from the top. I got to take you from who I am as a person. So Wallflower stemmed from a story in high school, 12th grade AP Literature, right? So I was never the best student. I won't lie to you. It might be different now. You guys love me. But like, I wasn't the best student. I hated homework. So I needed to fill some pages up. So I simply just wrote a story. It was just a story. It had no purpose. It was just, okay, this is what's coming out of my mind. I got to fill these pages up. And that's where it birthed. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, I can actually do something with this. So wrote it, graduated, went to college. I said, I'm going to write every day it rains in Humboldt County. It rains a lot out there. Didn't write it all. Didn't touch it. And so after graduation, 5 years later. And then I'm like, okay, I've seen a lot. I became the first African-American editor-in-chief within 90 years of my time at Humboldt State. And I was in Humboldt County for a long time. It's a small, very small county, not a lot of black folk at all. Not a lot. So imagine what it would be like to be a black woman out there. So I had that on me. I had that baggage, but I used it for good. I needed a job, so I got a job at a gas station because my jobs as a journalist didn't follow through. Their reasons are their reasons. Even though I was qualified, there's like budget cuts. Person who hired me didn't get hired back. I couldn't afford to freelance because I had to eat. So I took a job as a gas station attendant. And through there, I saw the upper middle class. I saw the upper middle class. I saw the chronically homeless. I saw people living below the poverty line. I saw people who were addicted to drugs. I saw all kinds of things, and I saw how they treated me as a person. So I was an observer. I wrote down what I saw. I wrote down what those interactions made me feel, and I put them into Wallflower. The gas station scene. It took me months to write that. Sorry, excuse me, the taco. That took me months to write because it hurt. It hurt. I didn't want to write about that. But that's how they made me feel sometimes. That people say racial slurs to me. I mean, they had their own things going on. But I had that happen. I had people like throw money at me, all kinds of things. Being a gas station attendant at a full service gas station, I pump people's gases. So I poured that into my book. So then it came time to read. I didn't read a whole lot growing up, like not as much as my peers did. And that's partly on me, okay, but also on like poverty, access to it. Sure, I can go to the library, and I did, but if you don't return your books, then the fees come in and you have to pay those fees. Didn't tell my mom about it, but I knew I had it, and I knew that they kept building, so I'm like, whatever. I read in high school. I read like Don Quixote, Anna Karenina, The Yellow Wallpaper, A Child Called It, but not so much for me. Then I started reading Wattpad, and I read stories by amateurs. So that's what I read, and of course Twilight. But I didn't read a whole lot outside of that. And then after college, I'm like, I need to read more. I have time to read more, so let's read more. So I went to like used bookstores and got books. At that time, I didn't know about Black horror writers. It didn't dawn on me. And I'm sad to say that, but it never dawned on me. So I got a book, forget the name of the book, but it's about a story about family. Next thing I know, they dropped the N-word, and it had nothing to do with the story at all. I'm like, you could have just left that out. So that really triggered the thought, I should read some books by people who look like me, who has something that I can relate to, because I couldn't relate to that. I'm like, I don't appreciate you saying that, because it had nothing to do with the story at all. You could just cut it out. So then I started to consume more books. So I Googled it. I'm like, who are the Black authors out there? So I found Tanana Reef Dew, I found Octavia Butler, I found Toni Morrison, Victor Lavelle, and I started to consume. And then I came here and I consumed more. And then I used their words. I kind of like studied their language, because language, it's a big thing. Words are hard. It's hard to talk to you guys. It's hard to talk to my peers. It's even harder to write them down. So I just listened, and whatever thoughts were triggered, I wrote it down. Or if I like listened to a song and that inspired something, I would write it down. I write down the scenes. I have like over 200 notes in my phone of inspiration of Wallflower and other stories that stem from reading these authors, that stem from music, that stem from going a walk in the park, walking around the lake, driving, cooking, anything. And I just wrote it down. And then it really revealed itself to me. It took, 10 years for this story to reveal itself to me. I thought it was one thing, and it turned out to be something totally different. I originally did not have a plan for it. It was just a story. It wasn't even like a Black story, a white story. It was just a story. But then it became something so much more. It became like a responsibility almost, that I had to tell my story, tell the story of what I see around me, and then expand on that. So honestly, even though I'm submitting this thesis to you all, I don't think it's done yet. I think maybe I have to tap into more, expand on my themes, and really let the story come alive. I'm pulling up my thought experiment of what Wallflower boils down to. It boils down to, how can I justify the atrocities of the world? And I do so by saying people are influenced by demons. But truthfully, people can be really awful. But that's my thought experiment. And that is what I have so far. We can talk about craft decisions in a little bit. You guys ask me questions, I assume.
Yes.
But yeah, that's how I birthed Wallflower.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dave.
Good.
There's a lot of info in there that I was actually hearing for the first time, you know, and kind of like getting that full picture of, you know, where you came from, where you're at now, where you hope to be going. Really lovely. So yeah, I definitely, I'm sure my colleagues have questions. We all have questions, right? I will open, I think, I have a few. The question I want to open with is, like, yeah, I mean, Beloved is a horror story and a supernatural story. And Beloved is how I fell in love with Toni Morrison. I read Beloved in high school. I was like, oh my God. When I think of, it's such an, I'm so glad you brought it up, because like when I think of that book, I think of, like, yes, like the speculative and supernatural being used as a kind of like as a thought experiment in a simpler way, right? Where it's just sort of like, how can we describe, or how can we begin to make sense of this like horrifying generational pain and trauma, other like just through the objects in our world now? We can't, right? So what if ghosts are real, right? What if, right, we can have this whole new kind of cosmology, this whole new metaphysics to help us understand this trauma. And so a lot of my questions for you today are going to come kind of like from that idea. But the first one I want to ask is, like, you know, like the characters in Toni Morrison novels, right, who are like undergoing intense pain and trauma and like unspeakable pain, right, and also have like ancestral pain, same about generations. Robin is experiencing that, right? Like Robin has this. We watched, right, the murder-suicide of her parents, right, and she encounters the body of Cheyenne, right. So both of the sequences we got to kind of watch/listen to today just describe two really hugely traumatic events for Robin, right? And she encounters so many, I think, throughout the novel, right? But also, I think what I so love about Toni Morrison is she's kind of alchemizing a lot of this pain into resistance, transcendence, and even joy, right? There's even joy and liberation to be had in The Bluest Eye, which is this, like, right, like such a difficult book, and you're doing that as well, right? Like you are putting those blocks, those building blocks into place, right? Where it's like, because I know, and I think we've talked about this, it's like Robin's having a hard time, right? But we also want to make clear that like Robin has a lot of joy and love in her life too, right? Yeah. And so that's kind of my question to you, right? As you're going back, because no thesis is done, no. Like, even when you sell the book, you're going to be editing it for years with your editor, right? So like, it's not done, not even close. But it's so much farther along, right, than when we first saw it. And I'm wondering, can you speak to the work you've already done and the work you plan to do to alchemize that pain into joy, right? Mm-hmm. Or to show that balance in Robin's life of the hard stuff, the traumatic stuff, and also like specifically like the black joy and the resistance, right? And kind of like how we can both confront history and, you know, build a new future, right? And that's what like you're bringing in the speculative in such a cool way to kind of help with that. So I'm wondering if you could talk about like what you've done and what you hope to do with this project to that effect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll try my best. So when I came in here, as you all know, I didn't know what I didn't know. That was just what it was. I just told a story. What's in my mind? So I went back in. And I really started to add those beats to it, like the story beats to it. From what I learned from all of you all, from screenwriting to prose. So I went back in, and I'm like, okay, how can I show that Robin's still dealing with her trauma? Because I can just do more, like too much exposition, and I did do that originally. So I pulled back. So I showed her triggers, because we are all triggered in human life by little things, whether it be a scent, a thought, a conversation. So I really wove that into the story, that sometimes she's triggered by things. For example, not getting that job at Plaza Street, and not really knowing why, but not wanting to tell her aunt, who is her caretaker, that she didn't get the job. So she didn't want to lie, which led her down a rabbit hole of when she did lie, and she wasn't okay. So I worked in that story beat there too, to show that pain. But then, now I know I need to add more joy to it. Because even though I have a lot of horror, I don't have enough joy. So I'm going to add beats that talk about what she do on her downtime. So for example, like she'll go hiking one day. Maybe she'll see something a little fishy, or maybe she'll just have a good time. Cooking on the phone with her aunt. I'll probably show that as well. Painting her friend Genesis and her cat. Her cat Salix. So Salix is a pivotal person,
Kind of
creature.
familiar.
Yeah, exactly that, in her life. So I'm going to work that in to show that joy. Robin still sees the best in people, like Sonny, for example. He's a strange guy for the most part, but she tries to give him the benefit of the doubt here and there until he just pushes her over the line. So she tries to see the good in people. Her friend Genesis can be a little toxic sometimes. She can be, but she still sees the good in her for the most part. Voight. So something about Voight, we just don't know exactly what's going on, but she still enjoys him. She sees the good in him. She will have some resistance toward the end, where he tells her who he is and what he is, but she'll still likely come back to him because of who he is as a person now, not because of his past transgressions. So she's going to have to confront her past. She is, if she's going to. If she's going to do so. Well, she's been doing that throughout the novel. She's been confronting it because it keeps forcing itself onto her. Like, she has no choice but to go through those beats. But when she fully forgives herself, when her story is fully realized, toward the end, when Reese puts it back in her face, like, you did this, your family thinks this about you, it's all your fault, yeah, but she realizes it's not her fault. Yeah, she's carrying this weight, this baggage, but it's not her baggage. And she's going to strive for a new future. And she's going to bring all that she can with it, and those who are around her, push them to strive for their best future too.
Absolutely. The one that I want to add, and then I'll open the floor to Pinky and Furies, is I think it doesn't even need to be, right, like, here's the joy, here's the pain. Mm-hmm. I think what's so powerful in particular about the Genesis friendship and the Voight relationship is they're both at once, right? Like both, like Genesis and Voight are in pain, right? Robin's in pain, right? But that group also experiences joy, right? Genesis and Robin experience joy, Voight and Robin experience joy, right? You know, and it's always a gray area, right? It's always the fact that, like, it's never black and white, it's never one end of the spectrum or the other, but like pain can outcome to joy, can outcome to pain again. And I think like, you know, it's more a matter of they're both here at once, and we're reaching towards that joy, right? Then it is like the demons happen, like we see the corpse, and okay, but at least we get to cook a nice dinner. You know what I mean? Like, because like that I think there's more power in the admixture than in the juxtaposition, and that's what I really love about what you're doing with Genesis and Voight both, right? And the pain she feels when she like thinks of Cheyenne, right? Mm-hmm. So we could talk more about that when we have our one-on-one. But yeah, that's a very, very good answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Pinky in Peru.
Pinky in Peru.
It sounds like a vineyard.
Pinky in Peru.
It does sound
I was certainly
very
going
lush
for a little
and green.
hike.
Yeah, exactly.
A wine tasting at the Pinky in Peru.
Peru's.
Let's do it.
P&P.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any questions for me?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
We don't have to. We don't.
No. I want to talk to you. Well, one thing. This is not a. You know, I know we don't want to turn this into a workshop or what have you, but I wonder if you've tried this, and I'd be interested to see the result. Is in the clips that you have from Pika Studios, if you would double that, duplicate that one clip, right, and then reverse it, you'd end up with a perfect loop, and then you can, so that, I mean, you may like that jump cut, I don't know, I mean, maybe that feels sort of like a heartbeat to you or something like that, but it would take that jump cut out of that repeated pattern, and it would look a lot less like it was repeating and a lot more like it was just flowing. Yeah, and I think it would, because I love that image. I just think that, you know, the face with the kind of animated pattern over it is beautiful, and I watch it all day. But it's pretty easy to make that into a a perfect loop. That may be too, angular, or I mean, you may be looking for the angularity, and I'm trying to take the angularity out of it. But, that just as a visual, and as part of that, I guess the other thing I would say is, don't sell don't sell what you've done short just because the production value may not be what you want it to be. Like the thing you did the first year you were here, like for me, that's like, and I'm the only person that are old enough to have any memory of my family's memory of this, but radio plays, right? Go and listen to The Shadow or Inner Sanctum, these radio plays from the 30s and 40s that my mom grew up on, my dad. And it's, they're by our standards, they're melodramatic, there's a lot of background noise, they're live, so people muff their lines and stuff like that, and they're intoxicating, right? There is a quality of immediacy that I think is irreplaceable by higher production value. And so yes, I mean, you want higher production value, you want people who are paid millions of dollars and you're paid millions of dollars, but don't undersell what you've already got in your pocket, because it's really cool. And one of the things that this project speaks of, and that, well, maybe I should ask questions, but I love what you love is the sort of depth of this project and the sort of personal, the history of the project is deeply interesting to me. And this is one of the few projects in graduate school that has enough history to make an interesting history. You know what I mean? Because usually it's somebody, in their last 2 semesters, right, figures out what they want to do and they're typing like mad. And this has a real depth and flow to it, and a real progression. So I'll ask a question. And I'm sorry, I'm speechifying, but so just from a selfish point of view, because we're sitting here in CVEX, can you talk a little bit about the sort of the digital element of your work and your education? And obviously it's not primary to this work. This work is primarily a prose work, but you've got elements, right? You've got visual elements, you've got audio elements, and can you just talk a little bit about how that entered your workflow and what it did to your brain, to the novel, that kind of thing?
Yeah, totally. So I came to SIU, partly because I got in, but also when I Googled you guys, I saw that you all were digital humanitarians and coming from a journalism background, I think I'll be a good fit there. So I saw your lab.
Good call, by the way.
Right, did some amazing things here. So then I saw your lab. I'm like, I want to get in there. And then spring semester of my first year, I did. And then I was exposed to things that I don't know if I would have tapped into if I hadn't come here. So using AI, right? And then using AI for your class my first semester because you wanted a digital element to it. So I'm like, all right, let's just tap into it. And I did. So I'm like, okay, I knew I wanted to visually see Wallflower because I'm also a visual learner. I'm all kinds of, anyways. So I said, well, what would it look like? So I plugged in a piece of my prose, how you saw there, and I just put it into Night Cafe, which is an AI art generator app, and it created something. I'm like, oh, this is nice. This is really nice. I can do this. I can keep doing this too because it feels good. I wanted to translate my work visually, and I did that. So that's how I started doing the AI images. Same as you saw with my little showcase there. Those are works I created with AI. So I did that. Then I'm like, what else can I do with that? So I just stuck with it. I kept revamping myself. I kept sticking with AI as it progressed. And then I wanted to do more audio work. And I can be a little insecure about my own voice. Like, okay, how can an AI read my work? So I started tapping into that. I did different versions of it over the course of my time here with different platforms. I think I like 11 Labs a lot. It sounds pretty good. Shout out to Toby for putting me on that. And that's kind of how I tapped into my digital element of my work. Was there another part of your question that I missed?
Well, no, that's really, I wanted to just hear you talk a little bit about, how you came into it, because you were the first, right? I mean, you came in very early in the, time where we had a lab that was working with AI and with digital stuff and that kind of thing. And I remember, and I wondered whether it was worth doing, you know what I mean? But I remember when you got a hold of it, right, and you were just like, what else can I use this for? And then, you were the first person who produced digital images I thought were worth looking at, right? That not just for my own sort of personal satisfaction, but this is really an expression of this person's art. Yes. And so it has really contributed to this place and to the vibe that we've got here and what I think we've managed to create. And so I was just interested to hear kind of how that story felt like from inside, because watching it from the outside was it was a revelation for me. Like it confirmed for me that the things I thought to myself were actually able to work out in the world, and were able to help talented young artists, find a voice, find a way to express and that kind of thing. So it was, so no, I'm just delighted to kind of hear the story again. It'll never get old. I'll just play that piece of audio whenever I feel depressed now. But no, it's really cool when that you came here predisposed to the sort of digital humanities thing, but that you as a conventional prose artist, or conventional is not the right word, but then you found ways that this could sort of open up worlds for you.
It did.
And that's that's just it was just so much fun to watch.
Thank you. To go on with that, I really wanted to see my work like showcased visually, but then I had the opportunity to do it myself, like almost for free. Or practically for free on different platforms. So I really love that. And I even used like ChatGPT as a writing partner back when ChatGPT first popped out, just to see what it could do with my novel. And I soon found out what Wallflower is, what Wallflower is not, through ChatGPT. So I found that to be very helpful, very helpful.
Yeah, well, you got deep research out of it.
I do.
And I think groundbreaking research. I mean, you were first on the spot.
That's
It's
true.
about Midjourney 3.0, right? So you were so early into that fray, and so early to be able to get past the kind of wow factor and get into like, okay, but does this really represent us? Does this represent me? Can it represent me? And what battles, what struggles do I have to go through to find myself in this, in this medium? And it's just been, like I say, that was a whole new thing for me, right? Because I was still in thrall, that I could type in kind of whatever I wanted. Have you heard anything about Sora, S-O-R-A?
No.
Well, it's not out yet, but it is the new text-to-video platform. And as soon as Sora comes out, I want you to start plugging stuff from your novel into it. It'll produce up to a minute's worth of video. And it looks really good. Have you all seen this at all? It particularly, I think, in the filmmaking world, it's going to be, because, right, like Pika does some interesting stuff, but it's 3 or 4 seconds long.
Yeah.
Right? Well, this is, we're talking much more complex scenes. And so look up some examples, but what you've started here, I think, is going to carry you well into the future. So instead of asking questions, I've apparently just told you about your own work. But I find it so satisfying. I mean, maybe. Well, I'll ask a question. Tell me though. You're writing in what can be thought of as a sort of melodramatic genre, right? Like you didn't go for high lit, right? You're writing a horror story, and there are demons and drowned bodies popping up, and right, horrible images and nightmares and revelations, and that kind of thing. So was that? What do you make of that? What do you make of horror? I mean, because we talk about Jordan Peele, right? And and a movie like Us, for instance, is a movie, like, the more I watch it, the more I appreciate it. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, I didn't get this at all the first time I saw it. And but he's also working in a sort of unrespectable, part. Now he's bringing it into respect. I think he's. But what do you make of the fact that horror is a genre, whereas like like angsty middle-aged white people novels are not a genre, that's just literature, you know what I mean? Like it's I just think it's an interesting place to be. What do you make of that, if anything?
Yeah. I make of it as horror can be real life. Horror is real life, which also ties into my PhD question that I plan to explore, which deals with Afro-horror and Afrofuturism and how it ties to the past, present, and future selves, and how that's all correlated with generational trauma. So we are just storytellers, and sometimes our stories are horrific. And I got into horror movies, I think, mostly because of Jordan Peele. Because oftentimes in most horror movies, the black person always dies, and they always die horrifically. And honestly, growing up, I noticed that. I really did. I remember that.
A lot of us did, yeah.
I mean, I'm glad it's changing now, of course. But like Deep Blue Sea and Anaconda, the black person lived in that one, and like I shouldn't be able to count that. I shouldn't be able to pay attention to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, to me, horror is real life, and when it's told by the person who I want to watch it by, it can be told very beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed Tanana Reef Dew's horror. I stumbled upon her on Audible, and I'm like, oh, this is nice. I can relate to this. Oh, this character experienced that. My family has too.
Do you know Nanette Okafor?
I haven't read her books. I
Oh,
read
okay.
like a short story of hers.
Okay, all right. But that's just someone to add to the,
Yeah.
add to the quiver, I think.
Yes. I read Out There Screaming, the anthology by Jordan Peele. Read that. So I'm consuming stories that matter to me, because not all horror is good to me. Some of it just doesn't have a purpose. So I like horror that has purpose to it, which why I said it can be real life, because typically those stories are rooted in things that need to be told.
I agree. Great. Well, thank you. I actually managed to ask a question. Amazing.
Dajonea, when you plan on taking this into the future, you said you wanted to work on it some more. What are you planning on doing? Do you think you're going to take it into the cinematic, or does it mean more revisions on the novel, on the language?
I have a list.
Okay, I'm just
So
curious.
yes, I'm going to iron out those details and rewrite it, right? And then of course seek representation for it, because I want to go the traditional route of publishing personally. I don't want to self-publish. No, shame against that. I just don't want to. I'm going to write the screenplay. You read an opening scene of the screenplay. Now that I know how to write screenplays, I'm going to revamp it. I noticed that my screenplays are they're visual first, right? So I don't have interiority, but that informs my interiority to the prose, and the prose informs the action in the screenplay. So I'm going to write a screenplay too for that, and potentially apply for grants. Make my own. Make my own movie for me and then distribute it because it's mine. If someone picks it up, sure, that's fine, but I'll still be a part of that. I'll still be a part of that decision making. Maybe I'll help direct it. I don't know. But I'm not too hung up on someone else picking it up when I can do it myself. And then distribute it, eventually have some kind of production company, and then eventually make it like official with an LLC when I'm ready to pay those taxes, but I'll still be producing my own work. And then that's my goal. Of course, when I become a professor, I'll still be a professor to fund my dreams, to continue writing screenplays, to continue to make my own movies. But those are my goals. And it starts off with Wallflower.
I'm also curious about history itself.
Okay.
And how much that'll be involved in Wallflowers. I don't know if you were there when we had that talk with Amir Sultani. Do you remember Amir Sultani at all?
Yes, from Harvard. He went to Harvard for a little bit.
And
yes.
He made that film about Oakland, Dogtown Redemption.
Yes.
And if you remember, I don't know if you were there or not, but just to let everybody know, that film took him 7 years to make because it dealt with race, identity, grief, trauma, and he was documenting a lot of the homeless in the community, and they were trying to make a living on their basically recycling center in Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to understand not only the documentary subjects, but he felt like he needed to understand Oakland itself and the history that was going on. So I was just curious whether history or like research into history is going to help Wallflowers, and also have you thought maybe Wallflowers needs that kind of time, like Amir talked about, like he couldn't make it any faster than it needed to be made, you know, that maybe it actually needs time because of grief and trauma, that sometimes those stories take longer to tell, you know.
Essentially, yes. I'm still gonna re-edit it, because I might find out things I didn't know. I do plan to read more memoirs to inform myself from people who have worked through those traumas, and simply kind of take what they wrote and take it and make it my own, so I can inform my characters a bit better. Do more research that way too. It's been 10 years in the making so I don't know how much longer I want to wait. But if it needs more time, it needs more time. I'll just edit it and still keep shopping it out there and editing it the way it needs to be. This is just novel number 1. There'll be a book 2. And then there's other ideas I have that I'm going to write. So if it needs to take more time, it'll take more time. But I am feeling pretty good about it so far.
Mm.
Well, I've got one last question.
Okay.
And then we'll wrap up. But so my final question is kind of piggybacking off of Pinky's question about like what do you make of kind of like being a horror writer, right? Or like working like I think everyone in this program is a genre hybridist, and I think so many like exalted literary writers, and we've talked about this, right? Colson Whitehead, Jonathan Lethem, Karen Russell, they're all genre hybridists. And I think you're doing the same thing, right? Or you're like, hey, it's horror, it's got the horror beats, it's got the horror, you know, like ideas and metaphors. It's also like literary. It's also a romance, right? And there's just so much, like, there's so much we can do to kind of like create these patchwork or hybrid pieces that really sing. And my question to you is like, going back to Beloved and also going to writers like also Colson Whitehead, Rivers Solomon, who I know I've recommended to you. We could talk about it. Unkindness of Ghosts, I really want you to read. And when we talk about Afro horror and Afrofuturism, right, and how all of these writers, Nydia Korfer, another good one. Nydia Korfer is using like hard sci-fi. Yeah, like she's using like this blend of like sci-fi and African mythology. Merlin James is going back into like the mythological as well, with his like the I was trying to title the Red Leopard or whatever it's called series. He's a big, I think, trilogy, and then Colson Whitehead's going speculative, right? And I wonder, right? You've gone horror and speculative. The big thing you're really using here is demons and demon possession. Like that is the big thing in Wallflower, right? Mm-hmm. Specifically, demon possession. There's a kind of like eroticized element around it with Voight, right? And then there's and then there's like also like a violent element around it with Robin's father, and other characters as well. And so I'm really curious if you can speak specifically to the metaphor of the demon possession, right? So like if like Nydia Korfer were here, or Colson Whitehead were here, and Marlon James were here, we could be like, okay, like how does the experience of like being a Black American, right, like inform your aesthetic decisions in this novel? And that's kind of the question I want to pose to you, right? It's like you're thematizing Blackness, you're thematizing Black womanhood. you've got these men in this book who are possessed by demons. They're traumatized, right? You've got people with past lives who are slave owners and slaves, right? And so I am curious about demonhood, past lifeness, whatever, right? And really how that's stepping in metaphorically for you. Because I think the more clarity you have around this big metaphor, the novel is going to resolve from the kind of peaks and valleys problem it's having right now into something more even more cohesive, right? It's gotten cohesive over the years, but it's going to have even more cohesion. So can you speak to demonhood and then past life stuff in Wallflower specifically, and trauma?
Okay, I will try my best. So at first I want to touch on, I almost have a responsibility when writing horror, to not do more harm, like how Aaron had talked about doing harm in movies. I don't want to do more harm with my work, because even though they're going through these things, these are real things, I don't want to accidentally portray something harmful to the Black community. Like, for example, what critics are saying about the new Good Times show on Netflix, that is can cause more harm because it's not really uplifting positive stereotypes. So I have to keep that in mind when I write. That's just my own personal responsibility. As for the big metaphor of demons and possessions, I kind of touched on that earlier today, excuse me, that there are terrible things that happen in the world. And I use this metaphor to almost, I don't want to say write off, but like to explain it. Like, people are evil beings because they are influenced by an evil being. And that evil being was created by that past trauma. And that past trauma is individualized. Like how I mentioned before, Reese's past trauma is the fact that she was in slavery and she had to do what she had to do for her children, and she hates herself for that. And she wants to get rid of that feeling by burying it by harming other people. Sonny, for example, he is influenced by a demon, but he's influenced in a way that he was kind of already evil, but it wasn't tapped into. He wanted to still be a good guy. And then I explained that he isn't a good guy because of the influence of a demon. But truthfully, wholeheartedly, it's just Sonny. So I kind of play on that metaphor that way in the story, that people are going to do terrible things, but the fact that they're doing those terrible things is one, because it's already in them, but two, it got tapped into by something influencing them, and that something is demonic. But in reality, it's just human nature. I think I should dive more on that metaphor and really work it out more. And it might take a little time.
You could.
I will do it before I can be more aware. But that's my reasonings behind it, and that's how I see it. It's like, okay, people are doing terrible things because they're influenced by something other than themselves. However, it was still already in them. No. Like, for example, even though Robin's not influenced by a demon, she still tries to murder her attacker, and her attacker was influenced by that demon. Right. So she still has stuff going on inside her, and maybe in a way she was influenced because of the past. It's like a chain reaction. Even though she wasn't physically influenced, it was someone else influenced someone else, and then she took it upon herself to commit that. But that's the basic way of how I'm going to explore why people do terrible things. Even like, what's her name? Excuse me, Jet Diamond. She's influenced by a demon too. And that kind of explains her microaggressions and racism. The woman, Teresa, at the taco shop, she's influenced by a demon as well. When she spews out that racist slurs and things like that, she's influenced too. So that's kind of just my way to say people do terrible things because of that reason. Sure. But I should explore it a little bit more.
It's such an interesting kind of cosmologically. It's like where is the human stop, the demon start, right? There's so much cool stuff to work with there. So yeah, we will talk more about that like post hoc.
Make that a little more clear of how, like, the transition of it, like the literal transition, like what happens? Do they like physically touch you? Do they like have to have a conversation with you? So I get that totally. I've been thinking about that too. Like, how can I show that? Because the transient man, he comes back. James, he comes back in the end, because he was also influenced by a demon, and he comes back from the dead. And eventually will become a demon himself. So I gotta explain how that transpires.
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Excellent answer. Kiruz, Higby, any other questions?
No,
for
that
Dej?
was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, before we'll hold our applause for just a minute, I want to give our audience a chance to ask any questions they may have. Anyone on? Is there like a? Toby, are there people like watching online who are interacting with us, or is it's not that right? It's a different kind of setup.
I haven't actually checked. But I'll look.
Yeah, take a look. In the event that there is anyone, we'll just make sure. And if anyone has any questions, raise your hand. Let us know. Other than that, I will ask the ultimate wrap-up question if no one has any questions. Any thoughts here, y'all? Good?
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Mother Robinson. Mother
Thought you were
Robinson. Incredible.
I know the type of person you are. And in creating this terrific, extraordinary work that you're doing, you have to pour out yourself into it. So what do you do to protect yourself, to keep the light going in you? So after you get into your creative zone and you're writing and creating, how do you bring yourself back out into the light?
How do I do it? I kind of distance myself. Like I see myself as like an observer, right? Like, yeah, I have bits and pieces of me in the story, whether it be characters or experiences, but then I take a step back and I try to push it to its highest maximum level. Like, what else can I get from this? And then I just remind myself that it's not me. Yeah, this stuff hurts, but it's not me. And there's still a light at the end of the tunnel because Robin keeps getting back up.
So that light in you is giving her courage to get back up. You see something that you can also pour out of you into that. And the end game.
Exactly.
She gets back up.
That's why the themes are like it's based on that resilience, based on that self-love, based on that forgiveness. And all my characters got to forgive themselves for something. That keeps me going. Thank you.
By far the best question ever asked. Thank you so much. Deja's mom, that was, so we actually are having conversations in class or two about what can you do to protect yourself emotionally during the writing process, in particular when you're dealing with traumatic themes, and then also after it's published. After it's published and people are reading it, and people are emailing you, and people are interviewing you.
May I throw something in?
Yes.
We pray before she gets into her zone in writing. We take this to God. And then everything that she touches, we actually bring light and growth to it. So I just want to know what I want to know.
Am I okay?
Are you okay?
Wow. Incredible note to end on. Thank you so much. This, I think, with the kind of imprimatur of my colleagues here.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think we're all feeling pretty confident about offering you, if you'll take it, an MFA from Southern Illinois University. Congratulations, Dej.
Congratulations.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
So proud.
Wow.
Bye.
All right, well, that was Dajonea's thesis. Thank you all for watching.
Thank you.
Yes,
I love
yes,
you all.
yes.
Thank you all for being here. Yes. Did you hit stop recording?
What are you going to say? Okay, the recordings is off.
Okay.
Tell the truth now.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
That was great. So good.
Oh,
So beautiful. Wonderful job.
I was very nervous how to